Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Tuesday, and all of our guests today on Donnie and Dolly, including Josh Yohe, standing by. Brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Book your stay at the Bayside. Enjoy the many amenities the hotel has to offer, such as oceanfront rooms, free parking, oceanfront restaurant, cafe, indoor and outdoor swimming pools, gym, and more. They got it all there at the Bayside.
Beautiful.
Call 250-248-8333 or go to their website, Bayside Resort, Parksville.com. Getting my words mixed up there.
No problem.
Daryl Sutter might be there. Kind of an inside joke.
Yeah, inside.
Canucks hosting Pittsburgh tonight at Rogers Arena. Here to talk about that from The Athletic in Pittsburgh. He covers the Penguins like nobody else. Josh Yohe. Josh, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
My pleasure, guys. How are you?
Very, very good. Hey, What goes through your mind when you hear the Canucks might be signing Phil Kessel?
Oh, well, my first thought is I don't know that they need him. Mm-hmm. Because of all the Pittsburgh connections in Vancouver, I watch your team all the time. I love watching them. I think they're one of the best teams in the NHL. I don't know how much he really has left to offer. Now, I don't think there's a whole lot of risk in bringing him in, and I'm sure everybody in Vancouver is aware that Rick Tocchet has a great relationship with Kessel, so I don't think Phil would cause any problems under Tocchet, who I know he has an enormous amount of respect for. I just wonder how much is left in the tank. The last couple of times I watched Phil play, it was pretty obvious to me that the physical skills were starting to decline.
Mm-hmm. I think it comes under the category, Josh, for the Canucks. Hey, worth the shot given the price. You alluded to something there, Josh, but having covered the Penguins, what's your reaction? And we're talking about Rutherford and Tocchet and Alvin and several players, Gonchar there as well. What's your reaction to the success all those ex-members of the Pittsburgh organization are having in Vancouver?
Oh, I'm not surprised. I have known Rick Tocchet for a long time. He's one of my favorite people in hockey. I just think he's a great coach, and history will show that the Penguins have not been the same since he left. And, boy, when you ask Sidney Crosby about Rick Tocchet, his face just lights up. I don't think there's ever been an assistant coach, certainly, that he's ever enjoyed dealing with more, or maybe any coach for that matter. I know he thinks the world of Rick Tocchet, and as for Jim Rutherford, listen, Jim's a boom or bust kind of guy. If you look at his history, even in Carolina, there were a lot of years they didn't make the playoffs, but they also won a Stanley Cup and made it to the final twice, and I don't need to tell people what he did when he showed up in Pittsburgh. Jim knows what he's doing. Jim just has a certain feel for this league and which players will work and which ones won't. He's not always right, but more times than not he is. Jim knows what he's doing. I didn't necessarily expect this fast of a turnaround in Vancouver, given the way things looked there a couple of years ago and some of the salary issues they have. But I just think it's a phenomenal story that they have quickly gone into the situation they were into now, a bona fide Stanley Cup contender. I think it speaks very highly of all the people calling the shots there right now.
Hey, Josh, what did you make of Kyle Dubas, his press conference last week? He acknowledged the fact they're the NHL's oldest team, but he says we got to get younger. Didn't really mention the word rebuild. What did you make of that press conference?
Boy, what I made of the press conference was I don't know that Kyle is quite sure what he wants to do, and I felt that way for a while. It's just a weird position in Pittsburgh because you still have all these Hall of Famers, and especially in Crosby, you have someone who's playing at such of a high level. I don't know how often you guys watch Pittsburgh. Sidney Crosby should have 25 more points than he has. He's been that good. He's been unbelievable this season. And so you have that, but the rest of the team is just so bad. It's a weird spot for a general manager to be in the Fenway Sports Group who owns the Penguins now. They just want to keep winning. They don't like rebuilds particularly. So I think Kyle Dubas is really disappointed with this team. I think he believed that it was going to be a lot better than it has been. So he's wanted to give them every opportunity until the very last second to try to make some kind of a playoff push. But if they do not have a good road trip, and this Vancouver, Seattle, Calgary, Edmonton road trip is a nightmare. If it goes as a lot of people expect it to go, I have to think he's selling off people, and I do think it will start with Jake Guentzel.
Okay, that was my next question. The Canucks they've got interest in Jake, and of course any former Penguin out here is loved by the regime here. What about Guentzel? What's it going to cost to get him? Could there be a sign and trade? Like, what are you hearing on Guentzel?
Well, as you can imagine, there are a lot of teams interested. The team I've heard more than any other that's interested is the Edmonton Oilers,
right?
Who I think would love to have him on Leon Draisaitl's line. I don't know if another scorer is what Edmonton necessarily needs, but I've certainly heard his name mentioned there. Everybody's going to want him. I have to think in most cases it would take a first-round pick, a blue-chip prospect, and probably another asset of some kind. I don't know if Vancouver has enough to make a legitimate offer after the trade that they've already made in the last month. But I also know that Jim Rutherford and Rick Tocchet love Jake Guentzel. It's not often that a point-per-game player is available this time of season. And in Guentzel's case, you can look up the numbers. He's 9th all-time in goals per game in the postseason, right in between number 8 Wayne Gretzky and number 10 Nathan McKinnon. Jake Guentzel is not only a great player, but he is a phenomenal playoff performer. He's exactly the kind of guy you want this time of year. So I expect him to go. I'm sure Vancouver would love to have him. I wonder if they have as much to offer as other teams do. I'm not sure that they do.
Yeah. And before we let you go, Josh, going back a bit, what was your opinion of the job the Penguins did, the whole show, retiring Jaromir Jagr's number 68?
I did something that I never do. Mm-hmm. During that ceremony, I actually had a couple of tickets, and I had some family members there, and I actually sat in the crowd just to enjoy the ceremony. Listen, I grew up in Pittsburgh in the 90s, so I got to be a fan for an hour during that. Jaromir Yagr, the whole weekend was incredible. He's so philosophical and so smart, but then he'll just say something inappropriate anyway because it's Yagr, and that's just who he is. It was like the rock star coming back to town. The whole ceremony was great. I know a lot of people in Canada were watching, too. From his speech to all the ex-Penguins who were in attendance, an incredibly memorable Sunday afternoon in Pittsburgh. And I wouldn't be shocked if Yagr ends up working for the Penguins in some capacity in the future. They really want him in the organization at some point to come back to Pittsburgh more often, and I think it would make everybody happy to see him.
Josh, that's not going to happen. He's going to be in Vancouver.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He's an ex-Penguin. That's what happens.
Well, and he's still playing, so, he actually, maybe he could be like an advisor/player since he is still playing. He even practiced with the Penguins, so that might be it. That's where all the other former Penguins go, from Teddy Bluger to Ian Cole and everybody else. It's unbelievable, the connections.
I know, Lafferty. It's a plan. Josh, above and beyond, we thank you for this and appreciate it. All the best.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.
You bet.